All right, let's do this thing. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Alliance Group podcast. And we have Mr. Sheldon Bain joining us from Five Rings Financial in Castle Rock, Colorado, to talk a little bit about what he's been doing with everything with his business. We're going to talk a little bit about networking and what he's doing with the Dads of Castle Rock group that he's been involved in since when, Sheldon?
Oh, well, first of all, thanks for having me here,
Oh,
Sam.
of course. Sorry.
Yeah.
Jumping right into it.
So the Dads group, I think they started in 2019, and it started as a joke. I don't know if you guys have it out here. We've got this thing called Neighborly, and it's like it's like an app where, honestly, a bunch of Karens can go and complain about things.
Kind of like Nextdoor.
Exactly. Nextdoor, things like that.
Yeah.
And so somebody was on there talking about who knows what. There was a moms group that had formed, and they said, hey, how come the moms group doesn't step in and do this? And somebody said, well, you should make a Fathers of Castle Rock, and then you do this. And our founder, Robert Ziering, he looked at that and he said, fine, then maybe we will.
Right.
And so he started this Facebook page, and honestly, at first, it was kind of just a place for a bunch of immature dads to go and,
fart memes.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Beer jokes, football games, things like that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of progressed from there. Today, there's about 2,500 members as a part of the group. Our community outreach, there's about 15,000 people that are a part of that. And I think we've raised probably in our time close to $2 million total.
That is incredible.
Money and charities and things like that we do that we give back to the community. So that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah.
So to go back, it started as this fun little, kind of almost like a spiteful, okay, fine, we're going to do this too.
Right.
And there was some time in the winter that somebody had posted on a group, and they said, hey, our horse is stuck in this ravine, and this blizzard's coming in.
It's very Colorado thing.
Yeah. Is there anybody out there who knows anything about this, anybody who can help? And my wife actually said, hey, honey, you grew up on a ranch around here, like you've got a truck, go help them. I said, okay. So I pull up over the hill, and there's about 30 trucks down there already, right? And I'm like, what is going on?
Everyone's like, I got a 4x4.
Yeah, right? And some of the dads brought tractors and all these things, and within 20 minutes, that horse was out, and, everybody just stuck around for beer.
Right.
And it was great. But at that point, they realized, hey, we can actually come together really quickly with some resources.
To affect change in our community and to help. It doesn't all have to be funny memes on Facebook, right? Like we can actually do something to help.
Yeah, it's funny. People ask me what, if I could define the Dads group in like one sentence. And I say, well, it's like if a fraternity and the Boy Scouts had a baby.
Yeah.
Right? Because
that's awesome.
We do a bunch of fun things, but when we're needed,
sign me up.
We're kind of like the anti-hero.
Right.
We do a bunch of fun things and quirky and gimmicky and all this, but then when we're needed, we actually step up and do what needs to be done. So,
right.
It's cool that way.
And you guys have really affected you've done some incredible things. Of course, we already heard about the horse story, but you guys have, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars on multiple occasions for people in your community that needed help. Just, you shared a few stories as we were kind of preparing for this podcast. So there was a fire, which I think was one of the first big projects you guys did, right?
So the first one is actually that I remember that we actually came together and raised a ton of money for. There was a guy in our group. He was in his early 20s, and he was in Florida, and he was visiting family or something, and had his 1-year-old son with him. And broad daylight, sitting in just some restaurant, and some tweaker off the street comes in and shoots him. Kills him.
Oh, my gosh.
Right, just random act of violence, no idea why. He was just there and saw this happening, and he stood up to protect his family, and he ended up getting killed. And so that came back to our group. I'm not sure if the guy was in our group or not, but he was lived in Castle Rock.
Right.
And we said, okay, well,
he was a dad in Castle Rock.
Yeah, so. And we said, well, let's try and do something about this. And so I think collectively we raised about $500,000 in a GoFundMe for his family. Right. And then
that's an incredible amount of money. We always talk about how GoFundMe isn't necessarily something that should be relied on for emergency situations, but that's a perfect example of when done correctly with the right movement and amount of people behind it, you can really raise some incredible money and make incredible change. So $500,000 raised for that gentleman and for his family. He obviously didn't have life insurance.
I don't think he did.
Mm-hmm.
If he did, it certainly wasn't through me. And the guy I work with now, who's a financial advisor, registered investment advisory firm. They handled all that. They said, hey, we'll manage this funds for you, free cost, no worries about that.
Wow.
And I don't think they did because that was the only amount that was brought in. So.
Right, exactly. So, you know, obviously you're able to do that for that family. And is that when you guys kind of realize, like, hey, you know, we can be a really big source for help in the community when people do need it, right?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the ones, at least that I saw, like, holy crap, this can be something really cool.
Yeah.
Another one that happened, there was that fire. So you brought that up.
Right.
So I think this was in 2021 or 2022, maybe 2022. There was a big fire up north, this area called Superior outside of Boulder, which is about 2 hours north of where I live. And it was burning down. I mean, I think the end total is like 900 homes or something. It started in a little community and somehow it just went from there.
Yeah.
And so one of the dads posted on there and said, hey, I own a moving company and I'm going to donate a couple of my box trucks if we want to fill these things up, one or two of them, and let's meet at Sam's Club tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and let's fill these things up, and however much we're able to get, we'll take it up there, water, diapers, food, whatever.
Yep.
And so showed up the next morning and there was a line of about 2,000 people outside of Sam's Club.
Because you guys have the dads of Castle Rock, but there's also the larger community group, right?
Right. So we're kind of a two-headed entity. So the dads of Castle Rock is that fraternity Boy Scout group that, we Facebook and all sorts of fun stuff. But then we also are a 501(c)(3), and that we have our own Facebook page, the Community Outreach Program.
Gotcha.
People go on there with all sorts of requests all the time that, hey, we need help doing this. We need help doing this. Can we, raise money and support this? And so this is where we have the heartbeat of the community and the pulse on what's going on, that we can reach out and decide, hey, these are some checklist items that we can do.
Absolutely.
Little sidetrack. There was a post on that one a couple months ago. Lady was 93 years old. HOA said, hey, you have to replace your driveway. And she's going, it's like 12 grand. How am I going to do that? I can't, I'm, living on a fixed income. There's no way I can do that.
Right.
So somebody posted that, and, our group that size, there's tons of business owners in there.
Yeah.
And so one of them said, hey, let's step up. If we can raise $4 grand, that's going to be the cost for me to do this. I'll go do it.
Wow.
I'm not going to profit off it. No big deal. Within 45 minutes, we raised $4 grand for this lady. The next week he's out there. They redid her entire driveway and said, here you go.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So back to the fire.
Yeah, back to the fire.
So we get there. There's, line of thousands of people that had seen that we were going to meet there and kind of gather together and let's go.
Yep.
And we ended up sending 12 box trucks up there,
oh my gosh,
full of supplies,
right?
Water, food, blankets, diapers, all sorts of stuff. And they eventually said, hey, you know what? We only need 5 or 6 of these.
We literally can't handle it, right? Yeah.
There's no more. We can't do anything more, right?
Yeah.
Like, you guys beat FEMA here. Good job. We can't, we can't do anything else. So they said, send it back, do whatever.
So you got 6 box trucks full of supplies now.
Yeah, and we're going, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah.
So we put it back out there and said, hey, this weekend coming up, we're going to be at the fairgrounds with these box trucks. No judgment, no whatever. If anybody needs diapers, water, food, just come and get it.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I think within 4 hours, the town had just came and cleared the whole thing out, and we went on our way. The coolest part about that is the lieutenant governor or something at the time reached out to our group after that and said, hey, first of all, you guys just made the Colorado news, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
And second of all, we want to put the dads of Castle Rock on our emergency response list, on our catastrophe list. So if there's something that happens like this again, we saw how in Colorado, I mean, it doesn't matter, but he said we saw how quickly you guys can get your resources together. Which, we all joke all the time and say, yeah, when a bunch of motivated dads get together, there's not a lot that we can't do.
Right, yeah.
We're far more efficient than the government and
You
collectively get together and going.
You guys did beat FEMA.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that was pretty cool to be put on that list of, they're going to call the National Guard, they're going to call, the local whatever, and then they're going to call the dads. Right? So
that's incredible,
yeah.
man.
Yeah,
that really
is
is
pretty cool.
There was and that's you've told the story of the gentleman who was murdered, and you told the story of the fire. There was also a car accident. Just another example of you guys helping.
Yeah, that one hit our community pretty hard. This was last summer, I believe. There was a car of teenagers, new seniors, either a week or two before school started, and they were driving home from some kind of event or something, and they were hit head on by a drunk driver. And I think 3 out of the 4 of them were killed. if I recall correctly, the one that survived, I think she passed away later as well. And that one was tough. You know, when that happens, the community in general kind of gets together and does their thing. But we said, hey, you know what? We don't really know where our lane is with this, but let's do something. You know, we can help somehow. So let's do a pancake breakfast. And I think about 4,000 people from the community showed up, and at that pancake breakfast, we did a little fundraiser for them, and you know, a couple $100,000 there as well for this, and we put a memorial together for them, and you know, we did some things like that. So. And
you know, we're kind of bringing this up, Sheldon, as you know, a way that you're networking in your community, which obviously is we're going to talk about how that can benefit you professionally as well and help introduce you to people in your community, but just outside of that, this is something that has really brought you a lot of, you know, satisfaction to be able to just be in your community and help your community and, you know, truly be a pillar for the people that you live with, your neighbors and, you know, fellow residents of Castle Rock.
Yeah. So not only that, my wife gets really irritated that every time we go out, I know 3 or 4 people. Somebody's saying hi to me somewhere.
Right.
And, you know, Castle Rock, it's not a big town, but it's not small. I think there's about 80,000 people at this point. And she goes, honey, it's so annoying to go out with you because everywhere we go, you're like the mayor. Like, and I said, no, I'm not. I'm just a part of this group, and we just see each other all the time.
Right.
And, you know, so if you live in a small town, you live in a big town, whatever, a group like this makes it feel like a small town again.
Right.
Because you just see people you know everywhere you go, and you just always feel like you have a support system around you. You feel like somebody's got your back all the time.
Right.
And the other aspect of that, I joke with my family all the time when they say, I am the person who has like that Mary Poppins purse, right? I can reach in there and pull anything out of it.
Right.
Because they're always saying, hey, you know, we need our tree removed. We need plumbing. We need what? And every single time I'm going, oh, I got a guy for that.
Yep,
I got a guy for that. And I just reach out to the group and I said, hey, who is our dad that does X? And with 2,500 members in that group, you can find pretty much anything X. Yeah. I think the one thing that we all collectively decided that we can't find that somebody's working on, somebody reached out to rent a mechanical bull. And that was the only thing that we're like,
one time we've been stumped.
We can get you a real bull, but not a mechanical one at this point. So it's just it's a really cool place to say, hey, you know, who can provide this? How can we help each other?
And it's, you know, it's something that used to be a lot more prevalent in American society, that whole sense of community. And, you know, we've heard with just the new age of social media and people actually becoming more separated by technology and things like that. You've heard of the death of the American community, and this is really something that is needed and enriches your life to have that community, to run into people that you know out in public, to have each other's back, to have a neighbor's back, to, you know, it's something that really is becoming, unfortunately, more and more rare. So I imagine that's just, it's very nice to have, to really feel connected to your community and connected to the people that you live with.
Yeah, it is. It's almost replaced what sports used to be, right? Sports used to be that cathedral that we could all go to, and it didn't matter who you voted for. It didn't matter, you know, what you did for a living. It didn't matter where you went to church. It didn't, none of that mattered. It was we're all wearing the same jersey. We're all here collectively together, rooting for, you know, the greater good of whatever we're watching. Right. And that, you know, that's unfortunately that's kind of gone away too a little bit.
Unfortunately,
you know,
somehow politics has worked its way into sports too, right?
So, you know, this group, it does just that. It's, you know, we steer clear of politics and, you know, whatever else in there, and we just don't care. That's not, nobody cares what any of this division is. Right. We are here collectively as dads trying to do better for our families, trying to do better for our communities. We also do these really cool things called life skill classes. So there's kind of 2 sides to this dads group. The first side is, this is a place, you know, you're a dad, I'm a dad. Sometimes it's hard carrying that. You know, there's a lot of burdens that we have to just kind of shoulder and move forward. And
sometimes dads are kind of left to quietly suffer because it's, you know, it's not the manliest thing to say, like, hey, guys, I'm actually struggling right now. I have a lot of pressure on me. I need someone to talk to, right?
Yeah. So the one side of it is this is a place that we can reach out to each other and say, hey, I need some help. There's no judgment. There's, hey, let's help you, right? You know, so we put on all sorts of stuff where dads can just come and sort of get away from things for a little bit and just, you know, do a little mental reboot, whatever.
Absolutely.
And then the other side is, you know, the one that I like is that community aspect where we can go out and reach out and do some things for all of that. But the mental health side is super important.
It really is.
Unfortunately, we just had our annual charity golf tournament, and it's dedicated to the dads who were in the group that had passed away in some way. And I'm looking at this thing on hole number 1 with the group I'm with, and we're kind of sitting there looking at this and reflecting. We're going, man, 30% of the dads on that list are suicides.
Oh my gosh,
that's unfortunate. Yeah. How do we help that? How do we fix that?
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do. But so this life skills class, getting back to what we were originally going there.
Sure.
So we kind of looked at the situation. We said, look, how can we best help society right now? And love it or hate it, statistics are statistics, right? If you are growing up in a home without a dad, you are far less likely to do a whole laundry list of things because of just not having that presence there.
Yep.
And so we said, you know what? And even if you have a dad, or if you are a dad, maybe you weren't raised in this kind of way, whatever, let's put these classes on and help out. So every month we do a life skills class, and this one is near and dear to our founder, Robert, where we'll say, hey, we're going to teach everybody who wants to show up how to change oil, how to rotate your tires, how to do basic mechanical things. There's awesome. A dad in our group who owns a mechanic shop, and he opens it up and says, yep, we got a couple cars. Let's bring in a couple of mechanics to teach these things and make it a half-day fun thing. And then we've got...
Is this for dads specifically, or like their teenage
sons? So this is taught by the dads to whoever wants to come.
Gotcha.
So generally there's a lot of moms who say, hey, kid, go do this, right?
16-year-old, go. You need to learn how to change a tire. Right. You're about to have a car.
But you'd be really surprised how many dads show up and like, oh, no, my kid's here to do this. And then they're watching intently, right? Like,
totally. I know how to change a tire.
Yeah. And so we're teaching them, too, a little bit. So we'll do that. We did a cooking class, just basic home ec kind of thing, which is great.
Which is also something that, like money, as Five Rings Financial say, it's not taught in schools anymore. Right. Like how to be a human.
Yeah. And to kind of transition there. So one of the life skills classes that I taught was finance, was money for kids. And then we also did another one. And I thought that there would be 10 kids that showed up. So there was 40 kids and probably 60 parents that showed up to that one.
Wow.
And, same thing. They're all going, oh, yeah. And then all of them came up after like, hey, tell me, I actually don't understand compound interest. Like, I don't get that. Like, help me with this.
Yeah.
And so just things like that.
And this kind of gets back to where I want to go with this, because one thing I definitely didn't want to do going into this podcast is to give any sort of impression that this was all like a professional strategy for you to get into this group. It's not at all. You would be doing this regardless of anything professional because of all of the enrichment of your life that you're getting from this Dads of Castle Rock group. But what I do want for our viewers to understand here is that Sheldon Bain has put a lot of work and time and effort and sweat equity into being a part of this group, into connecting with your community and helping your community. And because you are doing all of this, it is naturally producing opportunities for you because people see you out and truly doing it for the right reasons, helping your community, connecting people, being that person with the Mary Poppins hat that's just solving problems for people. And because you're not going into that group immediately, hey, I'm here for a networking opportunity. Here's my card. I sell life insurance, right? Because that would, as you said earlier, like those guys don't last.
No.
They don't last, right? But because you're doing all of this work, you're naturally getting all of this business spun off, including one very valuable relationship that kind of presented itself pretty early in the game, right?
Yeah. So before we get to that one.
Sure.
So to your point, for me, especially after seeing that first dad that was killed, that we raised that money for and helped, and he didn't have life insurance. And my thought was, well, I do this. This is my group of people. It doesn't feel weird to tell them and at least educate them on, hey, whether it's me or anybody, make sure you've got something in place because we just never know.
Right.
A group of 2,200 dads, you can imagine that more often than we'd like, there's a GoFundMe because one of them got cancer, one of them had a heart attack, one of them had a stroke, one of them, something. And, it's frustrating for me in some sense because it's like, I try to teach people as much as I can.
Right.
Without
You've seen literally this happen to other dads in the group.
And we have a good solution for that with living benefits. And, there's quite a few dads that have sat down and talked with us and ended up saying, yeah, this is you're right, this is something we need to do. But no, this is not something that I did thinking, oh, I'm just going to expand my business out of it. It wouldn't have mattered either way what I did. It's the community aspect of it.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes hand in hand, because if we're all helping each other up, and I'm standing up, giving my hand up to dads and saying, hey, let's do this, every conversation I have with them for the most part starts with that foundational piece and saying, hey, guys, I am here to help in whatever supportive way I can. But professionally, what I'm here to help with is building a foundation piece for you that you can sleep at night and continue to do what you're going to do as a dad.
Right.
If you don't have to worry anymore about what, if you're not staying awake at night with the financial stress on your mind, and we're able to help with that, what else will that allow you to do moving forward to better yourself as a dad and to help your family out and to do all these things? Would that alleviate some stress? Would that alleviate some of these mental things that we've got going on? And for the most part, it does. So, people know me now in this group that's kind of what I do. And, I'm not the only one, and competition's great. I love it.
Right.
But you're right. I show up as much as I can to everything I can simply because I love doing it and the helping aspect, but I am able to help in a unique way for the people in that group so that they can continue their progress forward as well.
Yeah, and we brought this up again in our kind of planning meeting, but you were referencing earlier how when you go out in the community, it's like you're a little bit famous almost, right? And that is what I think that's a very important part of what every life insurance agent, people watching this, everyone's always thinking about networking and prospecting, right? And I think that a lot of times people jump straight to, oh, I need more people to talk to. I need to get on social media and put some paid ads out there and meet strangers and talk to them about life insurance, when really sometimes the lowest hanging fruit can be make yourself a little bit famous in your community. We all live in communities, whether it's a small community, a medium size like Castle Rock, or even a large community. There are things that you can do to network within your community and meet the people that are right there around you and show them what you do and add value back into your community. And that is what wins people's trust and makes them curious about what you do a lot quicker than a paid social media ad or sticking your business card in somebody's face. Sometimes that becoming a little bit famous in your community can be really the best thing for your business and for your life personally.
Well, 100%. And I think the reason that so many agents lean towards the paying for ads and all these things and the volume game is because they're afraid to do that, for one, but they don't actually understand what we do. And what we do is I sell somebody something that they can't ever tangibly see for the most part.
Selling a promise.
That's all I'm doing. And I'm selling a promise of, especially if it's just term insurance, whatever, I'm selling a promise of, hey, this money's going to be there when you're not. And so people have a hard time doing that. But if they see me all the time, and they're going, I genuinely see Sheldon as somebody I can trust. That if something happens, I know that he lives right down the street. He will be there in person to help me figure this out, to help me do this. And I also been around him enough that I trust that whatever he's telling me is honest and it's going to be what it is. He's not trying to sell me something. He's trying to help me plan. And even if I'm not a client, we're still going to go play golf together. So it doesn't really matter.
Right.
I was reading this short little something about life insurance in the 50s and 60s before, I think it was A.L. Williams that started the, you can hire us to go sell your product type thing. So insurance companies used to have their own sales forces. And I was reading this thing where insurance companies, when you did that, it was like, hey, you want to become an agent? Great. Go find a brick and mortar in the community that you're working in. And now that is your territory. And I was looking at that, I was going, I bet they were really successful doing that, because you're right. They're right there all the time in your face. You can see them in the streets all the time. And, word gets out really quick if you do the wrong thing. And so if you do the wrong thing, you don't last very long.
And at worst, word also gets out very quick if you're doing the right things.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
It's word of mouth. So yeah, I think it's just amazing, and it's not overnight. That's the other thing I think that people they want a quick fix, right? Quick, and you can still be doing those prospecting things. You can still be doing paid social media ads. You can still be doing outreach. You should be, but you should also be taking care of that community, right? That building that thing that is going to take a while, because once it does get built and once you establish that trust in your community, that presence in your community, again, not only will it be so personally satisfying to be due, and your life will be better in general because you'll be enriched by that, but also it can do some really great things for business opportunities and for meeting people in your area. So back to some of the connections that you've made in your community, there can be examples of somebody who would normally be regarded as competition, someone that you're in fierce competition with, and that guy does it. You already, you know, and I do the same thing. So we're competitors and we're enemies, right? But with a group like this, it can actually open up the doors to reach across and say, hey, we don't have to be competitors. You actually do something a little bit different. I do something a little bit different than you. How about we refer business to each other, right?
Yeah. So there's a guy now that we're partners with, and this was probably about 3 years ago. Somebody reached out on the dad's group and said, hey, I've got this old 401k from an old job. You know, I need to roll it over. Who can help? And I was tagged a couple times, and this guy was tagged a couple times. So I sit down with this client to meet with him, and he's got about $800,000 in an old 401k, and I'm sitting there going, wow, this is, you know, let's help you with this. This is great. And the inside, I'm, you know, doing this little happy dance.
Yeah.
And so I'm showing him what we're doing. He says, yeah, that sounds great. You know, I've got this meeting with this other guy, but I'll get back to you in a week or two. And so he got back to me and he said, hey, you know what, I'm going to go with Justin because, you know, what he had, it was just a little bit better for what I was looking for. And, you know, no hard feelings, no big deal. So, okay, fine. So I was pouting a little bit to myself, right? Yeah. And, you know, a couple days after that, the burn was still there a little bit. And Justin reaches out to me on Facebook Messenger. And I'm going, like that wasn't enough for you, huh?
You needed to
right, like you just needed to grind that in a little more. And he said, hey man, let's just go grab a beer. And I was thinking at first, I was like, I'm not going to grab a beer with you, like to let you gloat about this. Like, no, it's no big deal. But then I was reminded, you know what? If nothing else, I should probably go and see what this guy's doing.
Right.
You know, in my mind at the time, I was going, well, I'm going to see what my competition's doing so that I can be better next time and beat him next time. That was my goal.
Right.
And I showed up, and
but also he's a dad of Castle Rock, so there's almost this like, all right, let's play nice.
Right.
We're both in this group together. Sure,
Exactly.
I'll meet you for a beer, or maybe you wouldn't have if it wasn't for the group.
Right. I definitely wouldn't have had it if it wasn't for the group. Right. And so we meet, and immediately, you know, he disarms me and he says, hey man, I just want to let you know what you're doing, what you had to offer this guy was fantastic. I just happen to have something a little bit better that was going to fit his needs. And I just want to tell you not to give up, like keep going and all these things. And so we were sitting there for 2 hours almost just talking with each other and all these things. And turned out that Justin came from a pretty prestigious advisory firm, you know, private equity firm from Merrill Lynch, and was, you know, dealing with all these multi-billionaires and things.
Very high net worth people.
Yeah, high net worth people, and decided, you know what, I'm kind of done with that. I want to go do my own thing in this community that I live in now, and, you know, I want more time with my kids and all these things. So he gave all that up, started his own little practice, and
wow.
So he knows what he's talking about, right?
Right.
And he said, by the way, you know, we do a lot of life insurance and annuity things for our clients because we kind of use that as a bond alternative. We say, look, let's put the money here that it's safe, it's liquid, you know, we can save in some taxes on this side, the things that we would probably try to do with bonds, and then let's take the rest of it and let's go make some awesome money in the market.
Right.
And he said, I understand it, I get it, but I really don't like doing it.
Life insurance.
Like the life insurance side, he's like, it takes my time. You do this for a living, I'm sure you're better at it. So would you mind? I've got a couple clients I'm going to send your way, and you know, and I said, great. The nice thing about that is they show up and they said, hey, Justin said I need to do X into an IUL. How do we do this? And I'm going,
great.
Oh.
We're already at step 6 in the process.
Right. Like, I don't know what to do with this. And I said, well, how much did he say to do this? I said, he wants me to do $2,500 a month into this thing. He said, you know how to do this. I said, okay.
Yeah.
You know, what's your social security number?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to help.
Yeah, exactly. It just got started. And so, you know, those kept coming. And you know, eventually I'd meet with people and they said, hey, I've got, you know, $1 million sitting here and I'm, you know, 46 years old. I don't know what to do with this. And they say, you know what? We're going to help you with some of this, but then the rest of it, I'm going to send you his way. So we were doing that for about a year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, it's better. It's great for you. It's great for him. And it's most importantly, really great for the client,
100%.
right? So you're not trying to solve every problem with life insurance, which we shouldn't. We know it can solve a lot of problems.
Yep.
And you're not trying to solve every problem with the market. It's you know, the client's getting professional, excellent advice on both sides of that.
Yeah, what we found. So there was about a year of just kind of back and forth, and then eventually he said, hey, I've got my licenses here. I said, come and hang them with us right on this side. We'll help you out on that side a little bit. Just makes sense. He says, great, go get your license here and hang it over here with us, and we can really make this a team thing.
Right.
And most of our clients, they really love the fact that when we sit down with them, they feel like they're in that private equity firm with $100 million because there's a team of us now.
Right. And with different specialties. Right.
Like, and we always joke with them and we say, hey, we don't always agree on the plan. Justin and I don't. And so Mr. and Mrs. Client, rest assured that him and I are going to argue behind closed doors about the plan until we both come up with a consensus of, yes, this is now 100% the right thing for the client.
That's awesome.
And and that's great. We argue with each other. We can butt heads on ideas, and we have to convince each other why. And once we do that and come back to the table, the client knows they're in great hands because we've done the right thing for them, not for us.
Absolutely.
It's we're kind of keeping each other in check a little bit because of that.
That's fantastic, man. That's absolutely. And again, one of those things that's harder to find these days.
100%.
Yeah. That's excellent. So really, really glad that we got to talk about what you're doing with your networking group and the Dads of Castle Rock. Again, it's amazing for your community. It's amazing for yourself personally, and it's also doing some great things professionally. So I think that the lesson for the agents out there who might be watching this is like, how do I get involved in my community? How can I do or recreate this amazing thing that Sheldon has been able to build for himself and for his community in my community? What advice do you have for somebody?
So there's been some people that have reached out in the past couple of years and said, hey, can you help me build this in my town?
Well, that's a big ask, first of all.
Yep. And so we kind of put together a checklist and said, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to start to do this if you're going to create something like this. To date, I don't think any of them have been very successful. Because of what you just said. If you're going into this kind of thing thinking I'm building this for my business,
right, you're done.
It's done. You can't do it because people see through that in a heartbeat, right? Yep. There's the next town over is probably the best example of this. We love the group. They're called the Dads of Parker. They started a couple years after us.
They just really ripped it right off.
And they did, and that's fine.
Right.
But they've had a lot of problems gaining their traction. And I really like the guy. I think he's great at what he does. In billing at the president of that chapter, but he's a real estate agent. And it's not his fault. And every time I've met him and every group I've been to over there, just kind of see how they're doing things, none of that ever comes up. But simply because people know him as that, they automatically assume
this is a networking thing.
You're going to try and sell me a house now to come in this group and all these things. And I feel bad for him because that's not where his heart is at all. But so the people that have tried to start this elsewhere, the problem that they've had is twofold. One, takes a massive amount of time and energy, especially to get something like this off the ground, because you got to get the momentum, you got to get the movement going.
Right.
For us, I think it helped in a weird way that there was a couple catastrophes right off the bat that we could all just band together and say, let's go.
And people could see, okay, these guys, their hearts are in the right place.
Right. So for everybody listening, I'm not saying start a house fire.
Right.
Like, don't
do that.
Don't do that. But it takes a massive amount of time. And the other part too is that if you're doing it just with the mentality of I'm doing this for the business, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah,
it's never going to work.
You can't even fake it, right? Because you really have to say, I want to get more involved in my community, and I want the community support. I want to help my community. I want to network. I want to meet other dads or people like me in my community. I want to do this for the right reasons.
Right.
And you can't fake that. You can't say, well, I'm really doing it for a networking opportunity, but I'm going to act like I'm doing it for the right reasons. It really does have to be. And again, that's why I was saying, Sheldon, like, you still need to be doing all of those prospecting things that you're doing. You need to do that because you need business now. But if you're interested in doing something like this, maybe you don't have to start it yourself. Maybe you start with looking on Nextdoor or Neighborly and trying to find a group that might already exist that you're not a part of. Maybe there's a seed there of like 20 or 30 people who are doing something that you can join and grow. Or maybe you do need to start something from scratch. But I think that no matter what you're doing, whether you're joining a group that might already exist and trying to grow it or starting your own thing, one thing we do definitely agree on is that you have to be doing it for the right reasons and not for any sort of professional reason.
100%.
And if you pull out those business cards too quick, or if you mention your business too quick, it can kind of, it can die on the vine.
So an example of that, I think it was probably about 18 months of me going and doing things with this group and just kind of getting to know people and all these before anybody even knew what I did. Because I didn't want that. I didn't want that weird thing. And then somebody finally posted like, hey, I need some life insurance. Who can help? And I said, hey, I can help you with this. And it just kind of went from there. So fast forward, almost 4 years. And I was looking back before I came out here, and about 85% of my business this year has been referrals. So that 18 months of just kind of getting to know these guys and getting in that community. And again, that wasn't my mentality of doing this, but it just sort of organically created itself that way. So, if people are looking to do this, just understand that if you do it the right way with the right heart, you can take care of your community, but your community will definitely take care of you back.
Right. And it is a long-term, sort of solution, and you need to go into it knowing that. But it's almost like, I hear a lot of agents say, I don't like to network, right? I don't like to do it.
Sam, I hate networking.
Which
to this
actually,
day, I hate networking.
It turns to your favor, right? Because you're literally, what we're telling you is you're not allowed to network.
Right.
Try not to network. And you're like, whoa. Well, that's great because I hate networking.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then just go there and be a dad and be a person.
That's it.
And help.
Yeah.
And that stuff will come because people will eventually ask what you do.
Right.
That's not you pushing what you're doing. People will ask. You don't even have to push them. Just let them know what you do. When something comes up and you have a solution for it, offer that help, connect people, and eventually maybe we could all have something as awesome as what you have with the Dads of Castle Rock, both personally and professionally. So, all right, turning a little bit as far as the subject. One thing that you do that is very unique in that you focus on it so much when it comes to your sales approach is you really, really love napkin presentations, and you really have several napkin presentations that you kind of, when you talk about them, they're your bread and butter. If you're sitting down and talking to somebody, you're running one of these napkin presentations. So I want to talk about some of your napkin presentations that you do, but first, as we're kind of getting into this, why do you think napkin presentations are such a powerful way to communicate with a client and to show them problems and solutions?
So a couple of reasons. We are at a time in our history where we have the least or the shortest amount of attention spans.
Oh yeah,
right.
What is it? Something about we literally have our attention spans are shorter than a goldfish's now.
Right.
Something like that.
A goldfish has a 10-second memory. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So for starters, talking about something as droll as life insurance, it has to be quick.
I almost just lost. Yeah,
exactly. Just then, it's like, get out of here. So it has to be quick, but it has to be informational and it has to make sense.
Right.
And so a napkin presentation, 30 seconds, a 2-minute thing that I can draw out. Really, the reason I liked it, Sam, is because when I got into this industry, I had no background in this whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Right. I was in the Navy, and then I got out and sold cars. Like I had no background in this whatsoever, in money and finance and all this stuff. And somebody explained this to me, and they drew it out that way. And I said, wow, that really makes sense because I'm kind of a Neanderthal, and I get that.
You're right.
And to this day, I'm still kind of a Neanderthal, but I can still get that.
Right.
And so I almost do it for me, not so much for the client. Like I do it for me to be like, yeah, that's right.
This is the way I learn.
Right.
Right. I have a very similar thing I do during new agent training camp where like when people are asking what Alliance Group does in IMO, like Lee drew me this very simple picture. And I think he was being sarcastic because I kept asking like, so how does Alliance fit in, with the insurance companies and then the MGAs? Like, what do we do? He's like, eventually he was like, do you want me to draw you a picture? Yeah. And I was like, yes.
Yes.
Actually, that'd be great because I'm kind of the Neanderthal. Yep. I'm also a visual learner.
Yep.
And he did, and I got it. And now I do that same little napkin presentation to explain that. So it really is, some people are visual learners. And when you break something down as simple as a napkin presentation that they can follow along, there's something that happens in the brain where they absorb that information easily, right?
Yep.
So you have several napkin presentations that you do that are kind of your go-to. So for people who are watching, just kind of walk through not do them necessarily, but kind of explain some of those top options that you do and when you use them and why they're so effective.
So I actually kind of have an order now that I'll do the 5 or 6 of them in a row. And I did a training a couple months back, and it was, how to take a prospect from a prospect to a client in 5 napkin presentations. Because what I've noticed in my career is that if I just do this same presentation over and over again, I've got like a 98%, yes, let's do it. Right.
Wow.
Simply because of this. So I usually start with the problem, right? You have to start with the problem. Most people think the problem is I'm going to die. Well, yes, that is a problem. Right?
That's a problem we all have.
Yep.
Not a unique problem.
That's right. So they're in their mind. This is why
this guy's going to tell me I'm going to die, and this is why I need a solution. Right.
Or even I'm going to get cancer. All these different things. Right. So I start with the problem. And when it comes to life insurance, term insurance, living benefits, that's all good stuff to protect the foundation. Mm-hmm. But what it can do for people when it comes to this big tax problem that we're all going to hit in retirement is That's really the big problem. People aren't dying early like they used to. Medical advances, all these things, right? I mean, someday Meta's going to put our brains in a computer and we'll live forever, and it's fine.
Right.
So, but there is the bigger problem is the tax triangle that we're going to hit. We call it the triangle of death and taxes. I actually learned it from the advisory firm that we kind of partnered with. And the problem is that when we get to a certain age of retirement, we've got our required minimum distributions that they're going to start taxing. And they're going to start making us take those taxes out every single year, higher and higher and higher. The second problem is Social Security, that as they're giving us the COLA for that, the cost of living adjustments, right? They're adjusting that up. So your income is going up every year on purpose because they want more and more of their taxes for that. But then we got this other guy on the side here of this triangle called Medicare. And Medicare is this razor-thin margin of IRMA that is going to continue to raise the cost of Medicare for you the higher your income becomes of earned income. So the government's forcing you to take more money out to pay higher taxes, but then IRMA's sitting there following it along. So, yes, I'm making more money, but I'm really not because all I'm doing is paying more taxes and spending more on this Medicare program, and I get stuck. So we look at the statistics of this, and after about 7 years of starting to draw from all of these things, that triangle really starts to strangle people down, and you could be making $10,000 more in that 10-year period of time because of the forced adjustments up, but maybe you're only making $1,500 more because of all the taxes and the Medicare and all these things you have to pay.
Right.
And so you're not actually giving yourself a raise. All you're doing is giving the money back to the government. That's all you're doing.
That's very interesting. I bet that is a very effective presentation.
And, so people usually get mad when I show them that, not at me, thankfully, but they get mad at the system saying, how come nobody's ever told me this?
Right.
Like, it's all right there, but how come nobody's ever taught me this?
Right.
And, I'll finish that off with drawing a little moat and saying, but hey, there's good news. We can build this sort of thing to protect our castle against that. And we can use Roth IRAs. We can use life insurance plans to help with this. And those are kind of the two best places that we can build this moat. And, the sooner that we teach people this, the younger they are, the healthier they are, the bigger and wider we can build this moat.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's usually guys in their 50s that I'm teaching this to, and they're going, okay, now what?
Right.
I'm like, well, vote different. I don't know. Like, yes, we can help in some way, but the more we can reach out to people and teach them what's going to happen, is going to be better for them to plan for.
And again, I think this is really effective because someone sitting down with you is like, this guy's going to talk to me about this. And then you go a completely different direction and show them something, a problem they didn't even know they had, right? And B, the solution for the problem. And now, this is what contributes to your 98% success rate. And that's just the first one.
Well, and with this as well, what do most salespeople sit down and talk about?
Life insurance salespeople?
Yeah. Well, in general, any salesperson.
They talk about what the product is that they're going to sell you.
Bingo. Right? They talk about themselves. They talk about the company. They talk about, how we're the best. This is what the products, this is all the things we offer. I think you had Jack Waldron on a couple years ago, and he always says that amateurs sell products, right? Professionals ask questions. And this brings up a lot of questions for people. I never once talk about any of our products. I just talk about, hey, this is the problem you're running into. By the way, I have a solution for you when we get to the end, because by the time I'm done with this, they're screaming at me like, fix this for me.
Right.
So we start with the triangle of death and taxes. This is the tax freight train that's bearing down on your life, and if you don't do something about it, I guarantee you the government's going to win.
It is going to hit you. Right.
It's going to hit you hard. So get prepared for it. And then we come to the next conversation of the dots and lines. And I said, look, so if we're going to build something to protect against this, if we're going to build a moat to protect against this triangle of death and taxes, we should probably put our money into something that can't lose money, right? There's plenty of places, well-diversified round portfolio, whatever the case is, but there's a time and a place to put money away that you can't ever lose,
right?
That you can still earn reasonable interest rates, hedged against the market and do all these things, and that's the dots and lines. So, when the market's down, you don't lose anything. When the market goes up, you get to gain with it. If the market's down again, it just kind of levels off and it just looks like this escalator. And I'll teach them that. I'll say, this is what an indexed account is. This is where we recommend people to put some of their funds for this moat to protect against, because if I'm paying taxes already on something, I'm sure as heck never going to put it in somewhere I can lose it.
Right.
That never makes sense to me. So we'll do that one. And it's kind of priming them up to be thinking. They're like,
so
okay,
there's index products.
Right.
And there are things I can put money into that will earn a return, but not lose.
Right. And it is a viable solution in their mind. They're like, I'm starting to get this now. Right. Great. And then I'll do the Roth versus the tax-free retirement account. And there's only three places, Sam, that we can put our money really to grow it tax-free. So it's Roth accounts, it's municipal bonds, and it's tax-free retirement accounts. That's really it.
Yep.
You know, people argue with me real estate all the time, and yes and no, you know, it has to be done right.
Right.
And then I always joke with them and say, you guys don't have enough money to play that game anyways, to, you know, to make the real estate game the non-taxable entity that it can be. You got to have a ton of clout there.
Very true.
So those are really only the three places. And most people don't realize that. There's a laundry list of places that you can put money that's tax deferred, but there's only three places you can put it that's tax free. Yep. Most of my clients, they don't have the resources to say, hey, if I'm going to earn 3 or 4% on a municipal bond, probably makes sense to put a couple $1 million in there.
Right.
You got $100,000, maybe not. Most of us are going to, you know, and most of us can't do that anyways.
Right.
So really it comes down to the Roth and the tax retirement account. And they're both similar in the sense that it goes in post-tax, grows tax deferred, and comes out tax-free. But the real difference when I'm talking to clients is, you know, the Roth, in theory, it was put together for a good reason. Senator Roth out of Utah put this together, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, because at that point, Social Security had become taxable and all that, and there was just no other place to put money. And he said, look, we have to give the American public something that they can put their money into that is not going to tax them down the road.
Right.
Which was a great idea. And then the IRS, like they do everything, came and screwed it up. And they said, well, hold on, we're going to have all these stipulations on it.
You can only
this is what you're going to do, right?
Only
so much.
And
you can only make
too
so
much money, you
yeah.
can't put any.
Yep. And there's penalties for taking it out and all this. It's just not a very liquid thing. So I'll compare that with the tax-free retirement account. And once we do that, now they're starting to draw more and more. And they're like, oh, wow. Well, I am doing a Roth, but I didn't know I could do this as well. And kind of use this as a more
and also thing. In the Roth, you can lose money.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, you can go down in your balance.
You can.
Right.
And, you know, if somebody's doing a Roth, I say, look, do that. Keep doing that.
Right.
If you like doing that, that's fine.
Oh, that's great. Don't get me wrong. Roths are great, but not solving this moat problem.
No.
Right.
They solve kind of some of it, but you got to have more eggs and more baskets for this moat.
Right.
So we'll talk about that, and then we'll get to the liquidity side of things. Most people do not have any liquidity. I've got a doctor who's one of my clients, and the guy makes $500,000 a year, and he doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together.
Wow.
Right?
Because it's all tied up in real estate investments or whatever.
Actually, it's all tied up in, I mean, he drives fancy cars. And it's like, man, come on.
That's the worst guy.
The worst guy. But most of our clients, they don't have a lot of liquidity. They don't have a lot in savings. They don't have a lot of cash accessible type things.
Right.
The rule of thumb that we try to teach our clients is, look, we've got our income. We've got our liquidity, we have our expenses, we have our retirement savings. And we'll draw out this big box for them and say, look, where do you sit? And most of the time their income is, you know, a little bit. Their savings is next to nothing of a sliver. Their expenses are twice what their income is. And their retirement savings is next to nothing as well.
Right.
And we say, look, we actually need all these boxes to be even with each other. And so general rule of thumb that I try to teach my clients is I said, look, you need at least 1 year's income of liquidity. And they look at that and they go, how am I going to get $100,000 in? And I said, well, first of all, this doesn't have to happen tomorrow.
Right.
But it does have to start happening.
Yeah, and you have to work your way through it.
You have to work your way through there. And the reason for that is it really helps to hedge against these things that we call black swan events, things that we cannot foresee happening, and they will happen.
Yep.
They're ultimately going to happen. You're going to have a flood in your basement.
You're
going to, somebody's going to get in a car accident. You're going to have something. And so that liquidity, and I tell them, I said, look, your liquidity, it doesn't have to be cash in the bank, but it has to be money that you can access within 96 hours, that there's no tax ramifications, and there's no penalties for taking it out. Most people think their liquidity is their Roth or their IRAs or their 401ks, and there's all sorts of problems.
Penalties,
taking
taxes.
All
that
sorts
is not
of stuff.
liquid.
That's not liquid.
Just because you can get at it doesn't mean it's
doesn't
liquid.
make it liquid.
Right.
So they say, well, how do I, what do I do to put this together? And then we'll talk about the tax buckets. And, Alliance Group did a great job of those tax buckets and sort of laying out, hey, this is what each bucket does, and this is how we can put this together. And so we'll talk about that. And I'll say, look, most liquidity and these kind of things, especially when we're getting to that size, have a 10
green
grand
bucket
in savings, whatever, have some cash. But we're going to put that green bucket together real easily. And we're going to start building that liquidity through your life insurance policy and make sure that that's there in case something like this happens. And if I need to, we'll talk a little bit about infinite banking and how they can utilize that later and things like that. And so I'll end it with, and I'll say, but none of this matters if something happens to you guys that you cannot financially recover from. If one of you gets cancer, if somebody has a stroke, if you're no longer able to generate income for your family, That's when the expenses go up. And the whole thing falls apart if we don't have that piece in place.
Yep.
So, I tell them, I said, look, all of this stuff is very important to understand and wrap your minds around, but none of it is more important than living benefits. If we don't have this in place, none of this matters.
Right.
None of this matters.
Yep.
And usually that's when the wife elbows them and goes, sign up. I don't care.
Yep.
Like, you do this, right?
Yep. Even if we don't do any of this other stuff we talked about, we have to do this.
This one is important.
Right.
The most important.
Right.
And so by the time that I'm done with that, it's, okay, here's your big problem. Here's the solutions for it. And then here's kind of the cherry on top that's going to help all of this at the end.
Here's the thing we have to do regardless.
Doesn't matter what any of this this is what we have to do regardless.
I love it.
And, at that point, I've never talked about myself. Never talked about the company. I don't talk about any of the products. Here's the problem. Here's the way that we can solve this. And by the time that they're done with that, it's this guy knows what he's talking about. Let's go.
That's incredible. It's it's very powerful. I think, again, the napkin presentations. For those of you who are watching, we are going to be filming these napkin presentations with Sheldon while we're here at Stratton Studios throughout the rest of the day. So those will be out and floating around the internet. Make sure that you take a look. He's going to actually do these napkin presentations on camera, so you can kind of see what his process is. It's really, really powerful, and I love how you kind of walk them through those steps. And now that you've kind of laid it out, Sheldon, I can totally see how, you say 98% of people, once you reach the end of those napkin presentations, first of all, they've been a little bit entertained, because napkin presentations do have some sort of...
I make them fun.
Right? Yeah, exactly, right? Yep. And they're educational. They've learned something. Again, you're not talking about product, and you're educating them. And again, by the end of that process, it becomes that kind of no-brainer situation where it's not like, okay, moment of truth, I got to hard sell them. It's like it's already been explained, and now it's just a matter of how do we get this done.
And in between each one, I always make sure to pause and ask, do you have any questions? Does this make sense? Because this also is a really good way to discover things. As you're going through all of these, they're going to ask something about something personal with what they've got.
Right.
I can't tell you after I do the dots and lines how many people say, "Hey, can I put my 401k in this? Can I do this here? Can I?" And it's sometimes yes, sometimes no, depending what the situation is. But every time that you have to stop and say, "Hey, do you get this? Does this make sense?" Yeah. I can't just bulldoze through this and expect it to all make sense. That's when the hard sells have to come in. It's just, I always tell my clients when we first start, I said, look, we're going to go over a lot of information. But the one thing I want you to understand about me is that if you don't 100% understand where we're about to put our money and what it's going to do for us, don't put your money there.
Right.
And that's my job to make sure that happens.
Right. So if you ask questions.
Ask questions.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Sheldon, Bain, Five Rings Financial, dads of Castle Rock. Amazing the work that you put together, the things that you've done in your community, the things that you're helping clients with, and these napkin presentations are pretty awesome too. I'm really looking forward to getting those on film so you can show them to even more people.
Awesome.
Sheldon, thanks so much for joining us.
Sam, I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
Listen to this interview and more on the Alliance Group podcast.